Hi, I'd like to welcome you to Sumaya Unveiled, and I'm so honored to have Dr. Dee Baer with me. Dr. Jody, when I first met you, you recall our first meeting. I don't. I recall the second meeting. It was at my dad's event, Les Brown, and you told me that we met in the bathroom, which is highly likely because I meet tons of people in the bathroom. Not to sound like a creeper, but I'm very social. And so when people say hello, I say hello. And then sometimes they start talking to me. And so I remember you said I gave you a great big hug. I'm like, that sounds really awkward, but I probably did, knowing me. And I just remember my recollection of meeting you because when we're at dad's events, there's so many people that we're meeting. It's actually inside of the event. And I remember you gave me the biggest hug. And what I appreciate about you, Dr. Jody, is your authenticity because you didn't just hug me because of who I was. I watched you and you treated every single person like they were a superstar. And I'm not a superstar, but because of who I was affiliated with, it wasn't preferential treatment. It was just you being genuine and you pouring out, just being a vessel of love. And I think that speaks highly to who you are and to your character. That is so rare in this world that we're living in today, where you have people who sometimes are understandably so cold. And, you have different types of personalities, but we need a Dr. Jody. We need somebody who's going to be fearless and just, outgoing and welcoming and warm. And I just am so grateful and honored to have you on this show. My father, Les Brown, loves you to pieces. My sister, Serena, adores you. I know she's the favorite sister, and that's fine. I'm a little jealous of that, but it's okay. She deserves that title. But I want to tell you that I'm honored to have you here, and I just want to thank you for joining me here today on Sumaya Unveiled. This episode is entitled Dr. Jody Unveiled, and I'd like to welcome you.
Beautiful. I don't know about that introduction. I think Serena's got some competition. That's
Well,
all I'm going to
plan. That was
This is what I remember about this introduction that we had this meeting. I was in the ladies' room, obviously, to do the necessary. And I came out and you had me from first high heel look. Those shoes were like, and they were the lace-up ones. They were like 9 feet tall, the inches. It was at least 9 feet that made you look that tall. But I'm going, wow, your energy, your presence. And I said, I want those shoes. Oh, you're one of the brown girls. Because I saw your I said, well, I'm a brown groupie. And then you complimented me on my leopard necklace. And
Oh,
we had
wow. Sounds like me.
that, yes. And we were hugging in the bathroom. I said, well, they might think we're weird. Oh, well. So we went back we were in Orlando at Drop the Mic. It was a training that was fabulous. Always fabulous with Les Brown. But
I'm glad you have that recollection, and I'm sure because everything you said, especially the compliment, because I do love to admire fashion on people. And when I see something that I like, I have no hesitation. I'll be like, I like this, I like that. So that definitely believe it. And I'm honored to have met you. And it sounds like it was a great connection.
yes.
And again, I'm just grateful just to have you here. And I want to talk about you've been through so much and you are successful. And I think oftentimes when we look at successful people, we don't really think about the person behind the success. Who are they? What experiences formed them and made them into who they are? And so I just want to ask you about, I just want to describe you first off. I consider you a very strong individual. You have a huge presence about you, a very commanding presence, but a very warm and engaging presence. And I want to know just what type of child were you? What were you like as a child? Were you always this big presence or who influenced you to kind of have and show up in the way that you do?
Well, I was very particular. My mother was very stylish. And I said, I didn't want to have straight hair. And I had this big long ponytail. I said, you've got to put a permanent in my bangs because I want to look special. I remember telling her when I was 4. Now, music was my talent. My mother became a widow when I was 3.5. And I found out pouring into someone, which is really my whole career of being and my whole presence of being a health coach then, because I found out I could sing Somebody, I could sing. But when I sang soulfully, my mother was lifted out of her depression.
Mm.
And that's the way I gave back to her. But then when I learned I could sing, she would always say, Jody, use your indoor voice. It was real hard for me to use my indoor voice because I had this big voice. But
Yes.
this is what I remember. And I remember that I had this talent, and I knew that music was my talent. And I knew that if I would do my singing, when I would do my piano playing, because my dad bought the piano for my sister and I, who's older, 3
Mm.
months before he passed away suddenly. So it was my connection with the keyboard, my connection with the singing always made me feel connection to my dad, who is no longer here.
Mm. Wow, that's powerful. And music, again, it just transforms lives. It's something that I always say music is therapy. I use it so much in my life. It evokes so many memories. So I'm so glad that you shared that story. I really am. I want to know. I know your story, and I know not your entire story, but certain pieces. And I know that there has to be someone watching who could be experiencing something that you've experienced, and I think it's going to be so encouraging for them to see the other side of it and to see that even when you have difficulty or challenges or things that pop up that you don't necessarily plan or anticipate, that is not an end all be all, but there's a drive, there is a push, there is a determination that will see you through that experience. And I want you just to talk about a very defining moment, if you can think of a defining moment. I think you're pretty aware of what I'm asking you, but if you
Yes,
can think of
I know
a
that
defining moment in your life, could you
yes,
please just talk about that?
that defining moment. And I've got to give honor to your dad, because he was the first person that
Mm.
ever pulled this out of me 4 years ago when I came back to train with him again. So thank you, Les Brown. And as I was as he brought this to my attention, because do you ever have something that hits you out of the blue? Well,
Mhm.
Sumaya, mine was a car. At this point, I was a classically trained vocal musician on my way to the solo performance with Handel's Messiah.
Mm.
And I was hit broadside by a Lincoln Continental.
Mm.
My next waking moment, I was face down in a surgical halo. Now, that same mama that I brought her out with my soulful singing, she came to my bedside. And of course, being face down, she looked at me, and with this Norwegian accent, she said, Jody, the doctors don't only know what they see. They don't know who you are.
Mm.
And ladies and gentlemen, there's something, the doctors only see what they see. Who are you in those moments? And I made a conscious decision. I didn't call it a hospital bed. I didn't call it a hospital room. I called it a hotel. I said, I'm checking out. But because of my faith, which is the spiritual pillar, because
Mm.
my mental tenacity, because you have to have that push, which sometimes means pray, but it also means persevere until something
Mm.
happens. And I said, I'm getting out of it. Now, did I read my Bible through from cover to cover in those 6 months? Yes. But Samaya, the good news is I walked out of that hospital room, left that bed, and I hit that door, and I've been running ever since. You
Mm.
know that right before COVID, I was awarded in my senior division as an Olympic distance triathlete. I was number 18th in the nation. See, that is my driving force, because when you can go ahead, and I'm fortunate that I came through this, but like your dad says, what you're going through, you'll get through. Your diagnosis is not your prognosis. It starts in the spirit, it goes to the mind, and it transcends to the body. There's not one time these last 46 years that I haven't hit the floor out of my bed and been grateful that I can feel my feet.
Mm. Grateful that I could feel my feet. That's powerful because when you think of feet, there it's a foundation, it's what you're resting on.
Yes,
And
yes,
even to have gratitude, it means that you had a good foundation, that there was a foundation laid for you,
yes,
obviously by your amazing, beautiful, insightful mother. that you
Yes.
were able to stand on and say, I'm grateful that I can feel my feet. I know what it's like to not be able to do that. What would you say? Because everyone that's going through this or going through something similar doesn't have the warm mother that you had that could get right in their face and say, the doctors are saying this, but this is who you are. What would you say? What I need you to be the voice that your mother was to you, to viewers who may be experiencing something similar.
And it's what I say, even I've got it on my website. A
Mhm.
setback is only a setup for a comeback.
Mhm.
You have that affirmation, but the most important thing, and I'm going to just plug my book, The 21 Days to Your Best You. It's chapter 8, because
Mhm.
this is what came out of this experience that I had with the Lincoln Continental. Let me tell you something. You are the president of You Incorporated. Husbands and wives may
Mm.
leave you, and children at sometimes better. But what does it look like when you are the CEO of you? You are always the CEO of you. You're the person that will never leave you. And there's nothing more that matters because only you, like a thumbprint, like a print in a snowbank. Since now there's no snow in Florida, but in a snowbank, that footprint is yours. That
Mm.
thumbprint is yours. There's no one like you that breathes, that feels, that experiences life like you. That's a pretty cool deal to be You Incorporated now, isn't
In
it?
a world, in a global digital society where we're pushed to assimilate and to be like the next person. If you want to be successful, follow this model, do this, do that, follow this methodology if you want this. And authenticity is sometimes frowned upon in our current society. And what I appreciate about your message, Dr. Baer, is that you are saying, no, be who you are,
Mhm.
be authentic, and
Yes.
understand that no one can be you. And that's a big deal.
It's a very big deal, and I'm gonna give your listeners and your viewers just a little tip about this,
Mhm.
because one of the things I've done in weight loss, when in health coaching, when I had my traditional practice, there was 35 client patients that lost over 1,000,000 pounds, and
Mm.
I would have, and especially for women, something about us women, okay, it just is. But stand in front of the mirror and
Mm.
I do this. Dr. Bernie Siegel mentioned this recently. When we connected for my second book, Healthopedia, he said cancer patients, if they start gratitude with the feet and just lay in bed and say, "I'm grateful for my feet. I'm grateful for my ankles," and go all the way up to "I'm grateful for my mind." Gratitude will prevail. But weight loss, I tell women, you go stand in front of that mirror naked and you start gratifying every dimple, every fold, everything about you because there's no one that had those folds like you. Because transformation and authenticity is the same. It's an inside job.
Mm. That's true. It's an inside job and it's a mindset and a reconditioning of the mind. And it
Yeah.
just sounds like you have a very disciplined mind. Is that something that just became natural to you, or is it something that you put into practice over time?
I was a natural.
Mhm.
I really was, because my why in this world, and which I just found out from Gary Sanchez when we did we did an interview, and I was honored to be his guest, and he said, of course, the why guy. He said, do the why, YOS. A big shout out to Dr. Gary, and he said, of course, your why is better way. Of
Mm.
course, I would go ahead and unretire. Of course, my solo book would be 21 Days to Your Best You. I think because from the very beginning, knowing that I was raised by a widowed mother who never dated, and she was gorgeous. She
Mm.
just never could bring herself to do this. So I felt like I had a certain mantle on me that I needed to do my best always, because
Mm.
I knew from a very young age how fragile life was. And I
Yes.
think that really molded me to just be disciplined, because it wasn't fun to get up and practice piano when it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I grew up in Montana. It was cold. And I tell that story, and my long suffering sister, to this day, she still sleeps with a pillow over her head because she had to hear do 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 and do the piano. But I knew that practice doesn't make perfect, but it makes progress. And I
Mm.
knew
Mhm.
that practice was going to get me where I wanted to go. And it was that practice that honed my talent, that then that same discipline with health coaching, finding my passion and my destiny, it really just spilled over.
Yes, I'm gonna ask you one final question before we talk about your websites, and I want to make sure that we can talk about your book and your website. So maybe two more questions because we also need to get to your book. So what would, if you had to choose at least one of your clients that you've coached throughout the years, you don't have to say their name, but do you have maybe like one, I don't want to say favorite, but one of your favorite clients and the progress that you saw? Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I remember standing in this line at a convention. She was behind me, and I just loved her spiky hair. And I had no idea she lived in Orlando. And this wonderful woman, and I will not say her name, but you know who you are. And she said, I think she lost 212 pounds with
Mm.
my tutelage. But I said, I love your hairdo. And I didn't say anything else. But she said, and she started crying right there in the registration line. She said,
Mm.
nobody ever says this to me. They always look at my body. And I said, I can help you get well. I
Wow.
didn't say she, because I always say, you aren't fat. You have fat. It's like you have the next right choice.
Mhm.
And the just absolute glee that I had from when she had her weight and she had to take it standing on a grain elevator. Okay.
Mm.
Then when we got down to, as I call it, under 200, I call it welcome to Wonderland.
I just want to thank you just for sharing those two stories, and it speaks to, you never know how something that you can experience can translate into your ability to really help and pour into others. And all I can see is just a setup of what you experienced in your life and how you were able to see two different people that were in need and whose needs were brought to your attention, and you were able to supply something to them that would empower them to go from one situation into a greater situation, maybe that they didn't envision for themselves, but you were able to kind of come alongside them and give them that push and that boost and that gentle nudge and those instructions to kind of get them there. And so thank you for that. And I want to talk about your book, 21 Days to Your Best Self, that is available drjody.com/books. So you want to go there. 21 days to your best you. I need you to tell me a little bit about where did you come up with this title and what was your vision for the book and just a little bit about it.
Well, number one, 21 days, you can change anything. It's the six pillars that I based my practice on and based my life on, going into mentally, emotionally, socially, and financially. I take these, there are 21 tidbits of wisdom. There's an ebook that goes along with it. You can take it with your run, you can take it on the cycle, but the 7 days is a divine number. The first 7 days are between you and you, because success is an inside job. I already said this. Then it's you and others. Relationally, how are you? Days 13 through math wasn't my subject here, 8 through 13. But then 14 through 21, you and the world. It's my 40 years of health coaching at this point, and knowing that this program had been a course for in my corporate health coaching before. It was what I wrote my dissertation on. Why? Because when you know in those six pillars, I will say it one more time: spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and financially. Financial is there. Then with that financial pillar, you can give a legacy, you can give a dynasty, you can give anything to the next generation. That's what I'm all about at now, turning 70 this month.
Wow, and looking incredible. You look fabulous, amazing. And it's beauty from the inside out. Dr. Jody, again, I just want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being a guest on Sumaya Unveiled, and for really unveiling yourself, Dr. Jody, and letting us in to not just your success, but the significant experiences that led into who you are. It's definitely inspiring. I know that there are people watching who can identify with you. I know that they can see you and say, if she can do it, I can do it. And again, I just want to thank you for being with us today. Join us next time on Sumaya Unveiled. Thank you again, Dr. Jody.
You're so welcome.